The younger fella is my grandfather, and this is my great-grandfather, Wilford P. Cameron. That was in the early 1900s when they were bottling in Washington, Pennsylvania. Before my dad passed, he passed in 1999, he told me to make sure if I ever owned a property on Strawberry Alley to look underneath the concrete pads if I ever dug them up, that there would be Coca-Cola bottles there as these or those. Yes, they were there. We dug up the concrete, dug them up, and we found lots of bottles. And because back in the day, everything was recycled and that glass was good fill, so they filled it in the ground, put the concrete over it, and that's when they built the Coca-Cola plant.
Well, I would take it home and I would dump it out of my driveway and hose it off for the first washing. Then I would take it in the house and I actually washed each piece by hand individually over a period of time. It was really interesting that the glass is so thick that it wouldn't cut me. So I did pretty well because I did it without wearing gloves. I put the bottles in my dishwasher. They did a good job. I figured if they'd made it through 50 to 100 years, they were probably going to make it through the dishwasher. So that was successful. In the spring of 2016, I would bring my grandson to the site and we would see the bottle glass, mostly broken bottle glass, shining in the sunlight from the site. I gave him a bucket and a shovel and we wore our gloves and we would pick up bottle glass. We did that until it was time for the excavation to begin. Then I would come back and pick up or dig whatever had been unearthed throughout the process. And I would come every few days because, with progress and weather, things would rise up and come out and I would pull full intact bottles out of the earth, which was like finding a treasure. When I was finally done, I think I had about 300 pounds of glass and old bottles. I felt that it was history that I was reclaiming for my children who would be, of the generation that saw the end of the Cameron Bottling Company. Peter and I decided several years ago to build a community center in Washington, in particular for the programming of the Washington County Gay Straight Alliance, Inc., which is an organization that I helped co-found with some other very special people. We built the center, fortunately, on the site of the original Cameron Bottling Company that bottled here from 1889 to 1953. And I thought how exciting it would be to bring all that glass back where it came from. I felt that the glass needed to be saved. I felt it needed to be shared, and I was hoping that someone had the vision to create an art project for us. I wanted it to come home to the center on Strawberry. The Benedum Foundation and artist Michelle Sabol has been instrumental in making this happen.
If it doesn't really sit for you, you can pull it back up and we can take it off and do it again, okay?
I heard that Kathy Cameron had this really beautiful historic glass. I was so excited that she was interested in building a sculpture with that glass. I was very interested in working with it and making a beautiful art piece with it. And in June of 2017, we met and I presented her with a series of sketches, and we really liked the idea of the negative space Coca-Cola bottle with the sort of scale type of pattern coming out from around it. The Benedum Foundation and the Rural Arts Collaborative had been contacting Kathy Cameron because of the nature of the community center being a new place for people to gather in Washington, and they were interested in placing a piece of community artwork there. That led to the teaching artist position that I took through the Rural Arts Collaborative. In addition to me being an independent artist, I'm also a Pennsylvania Council on the Arts and Education teaching artist, so I was very excited to work with the Rural Arts Collaborative to make this project happen. I really had about a year to plan this project before we actually started in the school. I planned how I would do a workflow with the students and how the frame for the mold would be constructed. So everything could be laid out beforehand. Because I was working with a large group of students, I worked with 20 students at a time, and I worked with 100 students total about. And I had each group of students do a very specific type of work to get us closer and closer to me actually being able to manifest my vision for this sculpture.
Hello, I'm Pete Cameron, great-grandson of Wilfred Cameron, who started the Cameron Coca-Cola back in 1889. Although it was just a soft drink plant at that particular time, they didn't take the Coca-Cola franchise until the early 30s. So anyhow, one of the first bottles that was called a Hutchison bottle, because it's a rounded top, it was before caps were on there. They had a metal insert which goes down into the bottle. Now here locally, people didn't call it soft drinks, they called it pop, because you would push the metal into the bottle and it would go pop, and then you would go ahead and drink the product from there. So that is the Hutchison bottle, early 1889s into the early 1900s. Then they came out with a next generation bottle. You can see it still has the metal container on top to try to keep the carbonation in the bottle before they actually came up with what they call crowns. It was a steel crown that they put on the next generation bottles. Still the color is what they call Georgia green. This next bottle is called a whistle. The bottle itself is called a whistle because it was a whistle pop, and the reason that it was whistle, because you blow across the top, and that was what whistle was about. All different flavors of whistle. Again, in the late 20s and into the early 30s, this product right here was called blood wine. It was similar to today's Dr. Pepper, kind of a cola, cherry cola type of drink, the way I understand it. I wasn't there to taste it, but it was years ago. Pretty neat looking bottle as well. Again, the Georgia green glass. This bottle here, it says W. Cameron on it. It was a flavor bottle because my grandfather didn't have the Coca-Cola franchise until the early 30s when they started producing Coca-Cola here. That was a flavor bottle, W. Cameron.
It's distinctive, right? If you think about a bottle for Coca-Cola today, they have a very distinctive look that sets them apart on the shelf, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes in the 19th century, people like Henry Heinz, who was making ketchup from 1869 to today, a lot of the people that were buying his ketchup in the very beginning, they couldn't read or write, right? They're immigrants, they're coming here, they might not speak English, but he wants them to be able to go in the grocery store and find his products. So one of the ways to encourage people to find your products is put it in a package that they recognize and that's distinctive. So when they open up, they look on the shelf, their eye immediately goes to what they're looking for and they know what it is. They've had it before and they like it and they remember it, right? So visual cues become really important to teaching people. So you might.
I wanted the students to have as much context as possible, so I planned a trip to the Heinz History Center and a meeting and a guided tour with the glass curator there in MADARASZ. She took us on a tour through the Shattering Notions glass exhibition, which gives a history of glass in our Southwestern Pennsylvanian region. that the students got to actually work with glass at the Glass Center. I think it really allowed them to understand the fluid qualities of glass and the sort of magical properties of working with glass and color and light.
So, what side do you want the top to be? This hand or this hand? This is the top? Okay. So, sometimes when we twist, see how it gets this little like...
At the beginning of each class, 2 students would be assigned to be the photographers to document the work that we were doing in class. Overall, the students probably took around 1,200 photographs and short time lapses of the work, and documenting our process as we went throughout building the sculpture. I did 12 resin pours in the 4-foot by 5-foot mold. Each pour was about 1/8 of an inch. The sculpture, the Unity Project, was planned to have these qualities of luminescence, as it is to be lit from behind, and also a quality of transparency that's inherent in glass, which is why I chose to just use 2 elements, the historical glass itself and a very clear art resin. Once the center bottle shape was in place and the dark outside shadow of glass was laid in by the students, I then continued to finish the piece while the students assisted with other aspects of the project. The students sorted the glass by shape so that I would know that I had all bottoms to bottles and all sides of bottles, which look like scales, and the tops of bottles. We have some glass here from World War II. It's got the Coca-Cola bottle in brown. We also have a Pittsburgh here without an H. Many of the students wanted to be able to take the different pieces of glass and see if they could actually reconstruct a whole bottle from it. Like maybe they'd find a way to take all of these pieces and, like a puzzle, put one whole bottle back together, find the different little pieces and be able to make every little crevice match. But the piece as a whole, the Unity Project as a whole, is doing that in its own way. It's putting these different elements of history and culture and the economy and the lives of our relatives who settled in Washington and worked in the glass industry all back together in this one piece that represents who we are as a community.